Hello everybody, it's a real pleasure to be here. I'm going to be talking to you in 12 minutes about Nexus 2020, which is part of the Nexus network funded by ESRC. And I'm the first person who's going to use PowerPoint, so bear with me. I'm even going to go one step further, and I was planning on showing a video, so don't judge me, excellent communicators, BBC broadcasters, film producers. We'll start off, if we may, James, by showing the video.
At the Cambridge Institute for Sustainability Leadership, we invite you to join us on Nexus 2020. We'd like you to think about the most important questions that, if answered, could help companies manage their dependencies and impacts upon food, energy, water, and the environment. Business has a number of impacts on food, energy, and water demand, and on the environment, but also has to operate within natural resource limits. These nexus elements are intimately interwoven, and impacts upon one can affect the others. This has direct consequences on both society and business alike. How do we deliver enough food for more people, but with less water? How do we meet increasing demand for energy without exacerbating climate change? And how do we maintain healthy water supplies that can meet our needs for drinking water, agriculture, and energy production? Most importantly, how do we meet these demands without degrading the natural environment that these very services depend upon? These are just some of the questions that need to be answered if we are to enable sustainable business practices, and we want to know what your questions are too. Nexus 2020 is bringing together business, academics, policymakers, and civil society to determine which are the most important questions that need to be answered around food, energy, water, and the natural environment to inform businesses and improve their practices. We are compiling an enormous compendium of questions which will be considered by leading experts from business and academia, selecting the top 25 or even the top 10 most important questions for research. This team will identify the gaps in knowledge that we most urgently need to address in the near term to secure our long-term futures. Could your question make it into the top 10 and be presented to the leaders in business and academia? You can submit your questions right now and influence future research agendas and business leadership at bit.do/Nexus2020 or tweet them to us using hashtag Nexus2020.
So I have some good news and I have some bad news. The bad news is, unfortunately, we have finished collecting all of the questions. So don't get on Twitter and start sending yours in. The good news is we have actually compiled and selected the top questions. And that's really what I'm here to talk to you about, is how we've worked on that partnership between business and researchers to identify what those key questions are that we really need to be answered. And really what that kind of process was in doing that. So Nexus 2020 was an unusual way of bringing together these different communities to get them talking and to communicate. Ordinarily, you'd think, let's just get a business and an academic, pop them in a room, have a really interesting, stimulating conversation, and hope that there is a little wonderful idea that comes up and they'll both work together. That doesn't necessarily always work. Not to say it doesn't, it works brilliantly when you're looking at technical innovations in medicine and engineering, but across the board, when you're looking at quite complex issues like the food, water, energy, environment nexus, it's really difficult to find that one kind of hotspot point that's going to bring these two together. So we thought we'd try something different and try a different approach in partnering these two different communities together. And our way to do that was co-creating and determining these top questions. And by having that one single task in mind, we were actually able to get them. I mean, talk about challenging and creating uncomfortable positioning, bringing business and academics together with very conflicting ideas, very different timescales of the way that they operate, was incredibly difficult, but once we got to the end of it, was really quite useful. And in terms of that challenge, we actually gave a set of businesses their trump card, which was, is this question, if it was answered, is that going to be useful for your business? Is that going to change your organisation and the way that you're looking at your business practices? And if it doesn't, that question's going to go in the bin. But on the other side, you've got to go to the researchers and say, well, is that a question that you can actually answer? Is it specific enough that's going to give you a research program that you can build a team around and actually go about doing some interesting, innovative research? And if it's not, that needs to go into the bin as well. So how did we collect the questions? We did this over a 4-month period from March to July. We went out, we asked businesses, policymakers, academics, civil society. Everybody was allowed to come in and put their question that they thought was most pressing that needed to be answered by research to improve business management of the Nexus. We had some really exciting, completely off-the-wall discussions, encouraging individuals to think deeply about business needs regarding the Nexus, challenging researchers to think where their areas of inquiry could be expanded and applied with an impact on business, and also asking civil society and policymakers what they thought were the most pressing Nexus issues. We did that through a range of different medium. We had webinars, presentations, workshops, newsletters, social media discussions. If anyone ever wants to do a Twitter chat, it's really great fun. Had a few wacky ideas coming on board, but it was a really interesting way of getting a lot of people excited in a very short space of time, so totally recommend that. And over that 4-month period, we actually managed to get over 700 questions collected by about 250 different participants from a range of backgrounds and regions. We were trying really hard not to just get it with people with expertise in the UK, but we wanted to be able to cover some global issues too. So we were then in this very pleasant situation of having over 700 questions, but we needed to whittle it down to the top 40, the top 20, and then have our sort of number one question. And the way we did that was by inviting, you'll get this now, 20 academics, 20 businesses to come together and sift through these 700 plus questions. And in doing that, we wanted to make sure, we're talking about partnerships and challenging, that we had the right type of people and the right sectors who were going to help question each other. So we had a real range of disciplines: agriculture, energy, construction, utilities, retail. We really tried hard to get a good mix, and they were all coming from totally different perspectives, and the discussions were very wide and varied, but we very quickly were able to get rid of some of those 700 questions. Then we throw in the academics, the research scientists as well, again covering a variety of different disciplines. We talk a lot in the Nexus network about transdisciplinarity, so we were trying to action that in partnerships and in collaboration as well. And it was really this co-creation of those research questions that we thought was vital to ensure that the issues that business need to be explored are highlighted, but making sure that they are actually answerable. You can have as many wonderful blue sky thinking ideas, but that doesn't mean anything because no one quite knows what to do on a Monday morning. So let's make sure we can answer them. In terms of the process that we went through, a variety of different stages. So questions were collected. We then tried to put them into different categories because, as you can imagine, there were quite a few questions that overlapped. And then we brought these 40 guys together, locked them away in a room for 2 days, stimulated them, gave them plenty of caffeine, asked them all to keep raising their trump card. I can't answer that in 3 years with £100,000 or whatever it might be through research. This is never going to be used in my business, so bin it, scratch it. And we finally ended up with a set of 40 questions that they were happy with. We could redraft them a little bit to make sure that they were really to the point. And actually, we pushed ourselves further and said, 40, when you're talking to business, even that's a bit too many. What would the top 20 look like? Which of these need to be answered ASAP? Which are the priority questions? And that caused even more conflict, as you can imagine, between these two communities. So probably you're all wondering now, well, that's really interesting, but what actually emerged? What came out of that process? What were the questions? Well, we had a variety of different themes that kept popping up. We've actually clustered our questions into about 5 or 6 different emergent themes. So we've talked about partnerships. We're all here talking about partnerships. So collaboration came up as being a really key theme, and stakeholder engagement and working together. Supply chains, was really interested hearing from RSPB about thinking about Cemex, Barratt Homes, and then Kingfisher. Absolutely vital for businesses if they want to think about food, water, energy, and the environment. Let's make sure we think about the whole supply chain and their direct and their indirect impacts and dependencies. Policy obviously came up as quite a key issue as well. I could go on. Finance mechanisms, funding, investment, a huge range within those top 20, top 40 questions all came about. Your next question is probably, great, can we see them? Unfortunately, in classic academic style, they're going through review process for a journal article at the moment, so they get first dibs. But as soon as we've got that approval, we will be releasing both an academic paper, but also sort of a jargon-busting, business-focused report as well. And I'm hoping we'll be able to reveal that next year as soon as possible. We've been asked again to be provoking you guys as well. So the journey doesn't stop here. We now face almost an even bigger challenge, which is how do we actually answer these questions? And that's really down to communication guys like you, experts on the environmental nexus issues, is working collaboratively together to help business use the research that we're developing in answering those questions. And it's really by using multidisciplinary panels of researchers and business practitioners to devise those projects that are going to find those solutions to these pressing nexus issues. So my sort of plea and provocation to all of you is let's communicate better, let's break down those silos, let's work together with different stakeholders and find collective solutions rather than being individually part of the problem. If you've got any questions, very happy to take them, but I think we're going to pass over to Ken first.
Thank you very much, Gemma.